January 25th, 2025, and this is one of those videos where I'm going to be vulnerable, similar to a video that I recently posted, and I'm putting this in my sub-series about how we autistics could interpret or misconstrue other people, like people in the neighborhood or people in a store. And believe me, if I don't get these things out, it's just going to continue to pile up inside of me. And what I'm teaching people is release things, like release the cloud in the bottle, and I'd be a hypocrite otherwise if I don't make such videos. And I'm trying to also make people consciously aware that sometimes what they say or the lack thereof or their body language might be misinterpreted as ableism, or it could also be misinterpreted as complete hatred. And so I can't speak for everyone with autism, but a lot of us are a master at misinterpreting things. But at the same time, we are magnets of ableism and discrimination and people laughing at us and mocking at us. And in our mind, we can't really differentiate the two sometimes, and so I have to release something that happened today, which opened a panoply of horrible memories, basically, that I never really released yet. And so here's what happened today. We were over in Brea, and we go there like once a month to shop for a handicapped friend of ours every month for several years. And usually when we're there, it's like almost every time there's Brea firefighters there from Station 3. So I get to see Brea Engine 3, and I always like thanking the firefighters for their service. Same thing with police officers and military personnel, and I just thank them for their service. About 99% of the time, they're very happy. They're like, thank you for your support, or thank you so much, that means a lot to us, and it means the world to me to continue to spread positivity and cheer and to thank people for their service. I believe that honor needs to be given when honor is due, and these people put their life on the line, you know, protecting people. And so I thank them for their service, especially with the things going on in LA at this point. I especially thank the firefighters. And so we were almost done. We were about to check out, and I see a couple of the firemen there. I'm like, oh, Station 3 must be here. And so one of them walked by me. He had like a t-shirt with an EMT logo on him, and I said, thank you for your services. And he kind of looked at me, smirked, nodded, but kind of in a way where it's like as if I surprised him or something like that. And then afterward I went over to Starbucks that's inside the Albertsons, because our friend always likes to get something, so she tells us what she wants and we go and get it for her. I look up and I'm facing the direction of the firemen, and they always seem to be looking over at me, and I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's a coincidence, but then right as I was leaving, they were leaving too. And so, you know, I just stood there. I was wanting to thank them, and they were coming over. I was getting out of their way, and he made some small talk as he was walking by, and I forget exactly what, like coming through bud or something like that. And I said, thank you for your service. He wouldn't look at me and just monotone just said thank you and just kept on walking. And so then the fireman behind him, I looked at him, he said something like, hey, and I said, thank you for your service. He smiled and said thank you or something like that. Now let me be the first to acknowledge how subtle these things were, but I don't know, as a person with autism, I take this information and I just put it together. I come up with a conclusion, and I'm also the person that gives the benefit of the doubt, so I try to come up with an alternative conclusion as well. So for instance, maybe he had a lot on his mind, and happened to be both had a lot on their minds, and happened to be where they're both staring in my direction from afar. And so that's the information that I got. I said thank you for your service to a couple of people, and they just didn't seem appreciative. And putting all that together with the body language like right beforehand, and remembering all the other times when I know that I wasn't misconstruing it, I'm like, I felt that something was off. And it's like, is it me basically? Am I too like scary looking because I'm autistic? I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, what's the problem with saying thank you for your service? I mean, did these firemen think that I was a joke or something like that? So again, I may be misconstruing it, but this time I just like discern something. But again, of course I might be misconstruing it, and I hope that everyone has their eyes open now, especially thinking about people thanking you for your service, whatever it might be. Just thank them for complimenting them, that's all. And so that's what I felt, and this is the effect that it had on me. I mean, all of a sudden I just felt invisible. I felt disliked by a lot of people. And again, this opened up a panoply of other experiences that I face. And then usually when we visit our friend, there's time to practice the piano. And so I was practicing the piano, practicing for tomorrow for church, and then practicing for Halo here in a couple of weeks, which is this big autism fundraiser. And I was just playing and practicing and reflecting on, practicing piano for the last 20 years and how proficient I got. I mean, I'm not like Beethoven, but I do play piano. And I'm like, what's the point? And I'm starting to get all these like thoughts and feelings. Like, I do so much. I do a lot for other people. I'm a substitute teacher. I do volunteer assembly, spoken to over 10,000 students. I have 2 books out talking about autism. I've gotten an incalculable amount of positive feedback from people saying how much I encourage them. I also have a master's in education, and I was in education for like 11 years after graduating high school. And they probably didn't know the help that I'm doing across the world on social media and news media, that I'm doing voluntarily from my heart, just to make a difference in people's lives and just to, you know, educate people that autistics doesn't mean alien life form. I mean, they probably didn't know that just a few days ago on January 20th, I was just on 4 programs, 2 radio programs, 1 television news, and a podcast. And those are 4 of several dozen media appearances that I spoke for, just educating people about autism and encouraging people with autism and their families. And I mean, like, I'm doing this from my heart. And then just to think about being viewed as like a joke or an insane person, it just gets to me. And so when I was playing the piano and practicing, I got those feelings again, similar to what I got in 2017. Why am I pushing myself in this life? Why does it seem like I'm doing so little when I have the capability of doing bigger things for the benefit of other people? It's like, why am I pushing through? Why did I push through 11 years after high school to get 3 degrees and a full math teaching credential? Why? Why did I spend like $8,500 to get both my books published? And that was the fee for that alone, not to mention like tuition cost for Vanguard University, not to mention all the PR and advertisements that I spent just to make a difference. And then I go to an Albertsons and say thank you to someone who risks their lives like every day, and they just don't seem to acknowledge. And in my heart and mind, it's like, I've done all of these things, and it's like, okay, well, these people, like, of course don't know about it unless they happen to recognize me, which is like 1 in a billion. But what I'm assuming is that they assume that I'm clueless. I probably don't even have the intelligence to get a high school diploma or something. And it's of course not just them, but that goes for like anybody else that just doesn't seem to acknowledge my compliment to them. And to me, it tells me that they probably assume that, again, I'm some joke or somebody. Let me say one thing real quick. As I was walking back there, a father and a son on bicycles were coming toward me, so I step out of the way onto the grass, and they passed me, and the father said, "Thank you." I said, "Thank you, have a great day." And he said, "You too." See, that is what I'm talking about. This is what the world needs. Anyway, I just got to explain that. Now let me give you a couple examples where I know I didn't misconstrue anything. So there's a time in 2022 when a person called me disgusting just for walking. There's a time I was walking down a sidewalk and 2 people on an e-bike was coming past me. I overheard one of them say, "Hey, did you see that thing?" There's another time when I was over at Westport Plaza and I heard another person say, "What the blank was that?" There's a time when I was, you know, called names and then almost beaten by a skateboard, and those are things that I did not misconstrue. And some of that I had on body cam, which is why I wear body cam to begin with since 2020, and I have those on YouTube as well. And so how is my brain supposed to differentiate between the two? So again, I try to give the benefit of the doubt. I hope and pray to God that I'm wrong, but at the same time, people who listen to me right now have got to understand that I've had times in my life where I didn't misconstrue it. It was bitter hatred against me on first sight, and my brain may not be able to differentiate between the two, but I just feel like something was going on. And then again, that opened a panoply of horrible memories that I have. So one of the first things that came to mind was a memory that I wish I forgot, and you know, this just brought it up again. Also happened to be a Brea firefighter at Albertsons, but this time in the parking lot. And I was just walking toward Albertson in the parking lot, and I looked over to the engine, and the person, probably the engineer, I assume, was looking at me, and I'm like, "Hello," and he just, like, his face grimaced even more, and his eyes widened, and it was as if he was staring me down, as if I was some like alien creep or so that he had to eye down to make sure that I don't like attack or something like that. That is exactly the face I saw, just grimaced, and all I was doing was just walking toward Albertsons. I waved, and he just did not wave back, and he looked mad, angry, eye to eye. And I'm like, what the did I do? I mean, like, honestly, what did I do? And I'm like, I support them. I back the red. I mean, just go to my YouTube channel, and I have a lot of fire buffing videos. I mean, I have high respect for firemen, and Unbeknownst to them, I actually wanted to be a firefighter since I was like 8 or 9. And then I got into a whole bunch of career choices and then ultimately settled with education because I care about the current and future generations. And so that story took place probably 4 or 5 years ago, I would estimate. And then that also reminded me of another story that I never said aloud, and that happened in August of 2017 at like this Costa Mesa event after church. And our church, Newport Mesa Church, like invited like the police department, the firefighters, and the like the lifeguards, and just had a day to celebrate them. So it's like a big event after church, and I did volunteer work over there. And so I volunteered for the children, the Royal Rangers. I was a commander, and also for the children's ministries. And so I was just there monitoring, and one of the small children there wanted to go inside the fire truck and asked me to go in too, so that I was on the driver's side and she was on the passenger side. Well, not passenger, but you know what I mean. And so after we're seated inside, the child asks me if I could ask the fireman if like he could do something. I'm not sure, turn on the lights or something like that. And so I turn over to the fireman and relay the message, and the fireman gave me like this weird smile and said, "Why not you come on outside and give someone else a turn?" Yet even though that happened like 7.5 years ago, and I never said it publicly until now, it's like my heart drops every time, because he probably thought that I had the mentality of like an elementary school student or something like that, making up imaginary friends because he probably didn't see the other person on the other side. I have no idea, and I just, you know, felt very hurt since that day. And I got to be honest in these videos. I mean, this is the mind and the heart of an autistic person. I'm trying to establish universal autism and disability awareness, acceptance, appreciation, and inclusion. Stop thinking that autistics means we have an IQ of a 2-year-old or that we're aliens from outer space. And I do favor the talks that are going around to ensure that, you know, people who are training to be police officers in the academy must take a class about disabilities. And just for the fraction of a percent of the people that might watch this video and still don't understand why I'm making this video, it's like, well, if I don't make it, then who will? And I know for a fact that I'm not the only person with autism that hold in these feelings. If I don't voice these things, then I'm no different than a bully. And as a result, people may not live their life to the full, and people with disabilities and autism might take similar feedback, like the feedback that I receive, you know, people yelling or not acknowledging them or whatever. Or worse, they may choose to do something against their life where they're no longer living on Earth, if you know what I mean. And that is what I've been screaming about for years and years. In fact, I have a YouTube video that I made in 2022 where I broke character, and I'm going to play that for you now. And what I'm trying to tell the world is just be nice to people who are autistic. Just because you see an autistic go down the sidewalk does not mean that they're aliens from outer space. I've been screaming that from the top of my lungs all this time, and getting very passionate about that, because a lot of people aren't as strong as I am, and they'll choose to do things to their life, if you know what I mean. And that's why I'm passionate about that, about this. And I know the hurt, I feel the hurt 24/7, 365, but I'm strong enough that I choose to continue this life of mine because I know I'm going to make a difference. And I'm just trying to get people to understand that people with autism doesn't mean that we're aliens. And I'm thinking, like, why do I feel like so crushed over this, especially if I'm misinterpreting it? And if I'm not misinterpreting it, then it's like they're heroes in my opinion, and they just probably don't take compliments very well. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Or maybe they just didn't want to take my compliment because I look crazy to them. I'm not sure. I was just, you know, like standing there, like I was about to head out the door, and I saw that they already checked out, were coming toward me. So I just stopped, got out of the way, and said, "Thank you for your service." And that one gentleman didn't look at me, and he just said, "Thank you," under his breath. And then, of course, what happened before that with that EMT, you know, just giving me that weird smirk. I'm like, what am I supposed to think?